we'll start talking, okay? Hi, everybody. This is Joel Whitaker, editor of Kane's Beverage News Daily and host of the Beverage Barons podcast series. And today we are talking with Doug Hall, who's out in Cincinnati, where it's about 40 degrees as we're recording this. Where I'm sitting here in Silver Spring, Maryland, it's about 61. So eat your heart out, Doug. And yes, we have a gray sky, but there's a little bit of sunshine hitting through it. So, you know, you have your winter and we have ours. I like this one, but this will not last. I know it. Sooner or later, you know, we're going to get hammered. I can just feel it coming toward us. But anyway, Doug founded Brain Brew Custom Whiskey in Cincinnati, Ohio a few years ago, but he also is involved in something called Eureka Ranch, and on top of that, well, he's got an interesting story. So Doug, why don't I shut up and let you just tell us about where you were born, where you grew up, what you did before you got into beverages, and how you got into the alcohol business.
Sure. Thank you, Joel. As you mentioned, my name's Doug Hall, and I'm from Portland, Maine, originally. Went to the University of Maine, got a degree in chemical engineering. Always wanted to be an inventor, was what I wanted to be. And my father thought I should be a patent attorney. That would have been a bad thing. I can't imagine the concept of doing that, although I have a daughter that's one, but she's wired for it. Coming out of chemical engineering, I made a career switch and went to work at Procter Gamble in the brand management department in marketing. And I took my skills of technical, plus I'd been very entrepreneurial in high school and college with my own business, and really got focused on innovation, which I loved. And I spent 10 years there. Was named Master Marketing Inventor, and my last year we put 9 products on the market in 12 months. Which is still today considered something of a record. And it wasn't because I was smarter. I graduated with a 2 something in chemical engineering, but it was because my dad had worked with a guy named Dr. W. Edwards Deming, who was an expert on systems thinking and applying systems thinking. And so my entire career, he worked with him when he first came back to National Corp when NBC did the special that my dad's project was on, part of that special that ran. We're dating ourselves now, knowing this. He taught that 94% of the problem is the system, 6% is the worker. And so I applied that to innovation. And that's how I was been able to invent ideas and get them to market quicker, faster, and more effectively. And so after 10 years, I retired from corporate life and created what's called the Eureka Ranch, which we still do today. That's where I'm talking to you from. Our distillery is on the grounds here. Where we've helped everybody from Nike to Disney to American Express invent ideas, and have been doing this for many, many years. Well, a few years ago, so part of being an inventor is you get to kind of pick the companies you want to work with, okay? And I like whiskey. So I started to work with Diageo and all various companies here in North America. And then at a dinner, I met some folks at a company called Edrington, which is a nonprofit trust to the benefit of the children of Scotland. And they own a company which makes the Macallan. And at the time, Macallan cost $38. It doesn't cost that now. And for over 20 years, I've worked on Macallan, helping them create ideas and to grow it. And one of the things that I learned early on was I said, how important are those sherry oak staves that you use? The sherry oak casks. They say, oh, it's 70%, it's 80% of the flavor. I go, that's pretty cool. And so a few years ago with Joe Gergash, I said, I wonder, this seems like paper making, but backwards. Because I'd worked as a summer engineer at a pulp mill. And when you make paper, you use heating to remove the lignins between the fibers, so to make paper with the cellulose. When you make whiskey, it gets warm, it gets cold, the whiskey goes into the wood, it comes out of the wood, goes into the wood, comes out of the wood. And the lignins set off a chain reaction of flavors, which creates amazing flavors. And, new make spirit becomes luscious and delicious. So I said, how hard can it be, right? And so we started experiments, and 3,000 experiments later, I might be a little bit gut compulsive about this because we get just a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. we figured out a way to do finishing. And it's not anything fancy. It's just whiskey, wood, heating, cooling. I mean, not dissimilar to Angel's Envy, Maker's Mark, Maker's 46, Whistle Pig, and others, just with tighter quality control because we drive out the variation in the process. And so as a result, I went back to Edrington and I said, you want to make a bourbon? And they said, well, what do you got? And so, long story short, we created a product called Noble Oak, which is now available across the country. It's, according to IWSR, it's the fastest growing super premium in the country over the last 6 months. And they said, well, you guys know how to make it. Why don't you start? I go, well, why not? So built a distillery, built a huge pile of capacity. And now we have tractor trailer trucks, and it's become the Brain Brew Distillery has become basically a way to test the things that we teach and that we do at the Eureka Ranch. This is like our laboratory for doing it. And as it turns out, Edrington's doing it. We've now got 2 of the 3 biggest whiskey companies talking to us saying, can we help them create something as well? We've got other companies coming to us, and then we have our own businesses. We've got 2 businesses that we're doing. And I took the ranch, and the lady named Maggie Nichols was COO, and I said, how about if you run this and I'll go run the whiskey company? And so I was getting ready to retire. Now I'm having more fun than I've ever had in my life, and I'm also working harder than I ever had in my life.
Right. So you and Mike Bloomberg are in that category. I don't know if you and Joe Biden are in that category. I don't know if he's having more fun than he's ever had in his life lately. But
so.
But beware of what you wish for, right? And
sure.
That's obviously him. So I got a couple of questions for you. First of all, my mother's a Texan, or she was a Texan before she passed. And to me, a ranch has cattle. So wandering around between the semi-trailers there, do we have cows on Eureka Ranch, or what is Eureka Ranch all about?
Yeah, so the ranch is, we do 2 things. We do inventing, Eureka Inventing, where we help people basically solve big problems where they have to make more money, whether it's to reinventing because they're going down. And then we also have a training program called Innovation Engineering, where we teach them how to create a culture of innovation. And we chose ranch as the name. It's on a private lake. It's a beautiful place, 80 acres, just outside of Cincinnati, and with a very southwest open air design. And ranch just gave that spirit of exploration in doing it. My daughters, when they were around, they used to bring their horses around, which added a little bit here. But it's more of a ranch for minds to think and to chill out. And it's just good fun.
Got it. Well, it sounds like a whimsical name, as does Brain Brew Custom Whiskey. So how'd you come up with the name Brain Brew? I mean, Well, it's a name that we've had for our coffee for a while, but I named it that because one of the things and this is contrary to the way much of this industry works, is I believe in, as Deming taught, and what we teach people, because we have courses on campus that we teach and all that, is never-ending continuous improvement. And so every employee, they've got shirts that have it on it and different things. And I'm big with them when they're doing about something. They're saying, well, they always do it this way. I said, what's the name of our company? They said, BrainBrew. I said, that's because we're smarter. How do we reinvent that? How do we do that differently? The fact that everybody does it that way, that doesn't mean that we're going to do it that way. And in fact, early on, so far, I've not hired anybody from the industry. I'm the only old fart from the industry. I'm part of the culinary problem. I've hired people that are chefs and that, who get flavor, they get systems, and they get creativity, and they run factories now. And we ship out tens of thousands. A tractor trailer goes every week from here. And I want them thinking, because this is an industry built on traditions, which is wonderful. But the way you build a company that's successful is you've got to be continually innovating, never-ending continuous improvement. We got to change. And so the ways we do things are very different than the way the industry does. And just because it's been done that way doesn't mean we should keep doing it that way. Got it. And that makes a lot of sense. I, uh, I have observed private companies over the years, and some public companies too, and it seems to me that that is one of the things that sometimes happens is that they stop innovating, and then, as T. Rowe Price, the investment sage up in Baltimore, said in 1960, what was it, 2 or 63, a businessman's only certainty is change, and if you are building your business on the assumption nothing will ever change, it will always be the way it is, and COVID comes along, or the internet comes along, or something else comes along, it seems to me you're in deep trouble. So I think you're exactly right.
But it's more than that, though, I think, Joel, because yes, that's how you make money. No question about it. However, it also makes it so much fun you can hardly sleep, because it means tomorrow can be better than today. When you have a culture of innovation, you have hope for the future. You're playing offense. You're being proactive, not reactive. The minute you spend more time being reactive, you're on your way to death. You just don't know it yet. And my team, they finally lost their mind, because I'll come out and they'll say, "Wham, we're having a problem. This isn't working. This isn't working. It's just a mess." I go, "That's fantastic." I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I bet when you figure that out, we're going to be able to file a patent on that." And now it's to the point where they just don't even bother to bring it up, because they know I'm not going to put up with it. They've got the tools. We've given them, every one of them gets training from the ranch on how to do it. And it's like, let's reinvent it. Let's change this industry. And our success is ridiculous. To start in just a few years and to be nationwide with a product, get another product that's literally on allocation that's taken off, and to have 4 really big companies coming to us and saying, because of your expertise in making whiskey and unique tastes, meaningful unique tastes, could you help us with this? I mean, that's ridiculous, but it's because of that culture of never-ending innovation.
So it sounds to me like if you don't have it, you should have a picture of Thomas Edison hanging on your office wall off there to the left, next to your bookcase, because of course he was the great inventor of the 1890s, I guess, roughly, and electric light bulb and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he is famous for having, at one point, had somebody come to him and ask, "How many experiments have you done to invent this?" And it had not, whatever it was, had not been invented yet. And he said, "Oh, about 1,000." And he said, "Don't you feel like a failure?" And Edison said, "Oh, absolutely not. I'm a total success. We've already discovered 1,000 ways this will not work. Now we have to find the next way that it either will or won't work." So you sound like you're right out of that playbook.
Yeah, it is. And of course, everybody will nod. If you're sitting there enjoying a dram of whiskey, they say, "Oh yeah, of course you have to fail to win." But they don't build the systems to do what Deming called plan, do, study, act, or which is reverently called fail fast, fail cheap. And the key is fast and cheap. Running quick experiments. Right now we're in the holiday season as we're doing this. And so every day is like prime time because of the holiday buying. And in our case, the holiday is worth much less relative to the rest of the year, because I told the team early on, I said, "I'm not interested in a business that runs 6 weeks a year, 4 at the holidays and 2 around Father's Day. We got to make it work. The way you make money in this business, you got to be able to make money in January, February, March, and the off times. Any idiot can sell whiskey in December. It's the other times." But even so, right now, this is the time when I said every single week we have a new experiment. Every single week we're trying something else. Maybe it's a marketing thing, a product thing. I said, this is the time when we can accelerate learning, because their eyeballs are looking more and we can learn faster. And so, and they're like, "Well, what are our sales?" I said, "I don't care what the sales are. If we're learning and we're getting smarter, the sales will take care of themselves. But we got to focus. I want you to focus on learning rather than on selling. Because if you're learning and we're doing the systems and you're following the systems, success is guaranteed." And that works. It works. It's as simple as that. It works.
So I'm tempted to ask you at this point, in fact, I think I will. So can you, in a ABC type format, tell us sort of the fundamentals of the system? I mean, obviously, I'm going to give you an opportunity at the end to invite people to come to Eureka Ranch and learn it in detail. But even though I didn't tell you I was going to do that, I will. But can you sort of give us, aside from that mindset change, can you give us a 1, 2, 3, 4 type breakdown?
Well, so let me do it in two parts. Okay.
Okay.
Let me talk to you in theory about it, but then let me talk to you about how it gets applied in the real world. Because Tom Peters is a good friend. He wrote a foreword to one of my best-selling books. And I wrote him, I said, Tom, I hope you don't mind. I make fun of people that preach but don't practice anymore. And he said, oh, that's okay. I haven't done anything meaningful in a long time since I've done this. And so for me, the whiskey business is even more important than the theory that I've written 7 books and all this kind of foolishness and done TV shows. But the application is important. So let's divide it in 2 pieces. So the first thing is, when it comes to this thing, first off, you have to have a dependent variable. What is success look like? What is a great business or a great company? And having done way too much research and a bunch of academic articles I've written on it, what we found is the thing that is most predictive of success is that your offering is meaningfully unique. So not just something people like, but that they like and they can't get anywhere else. And we can measure this. We've quantified it. We ask people how interested they are in buying it and how new and different it is. And you do a weighting, a 60-40 weighting on it. And so that meaningful uniqueness, when you get that, you get higher margin, better distribution, more awareness, because people tell other people about it. You get word of mouth that kicks in. And so you've got to be meaningfully unique at the end of the day. And that's the first and foremost thing. The second thing that happens is you've got to have, and this came from my Procter Gamble days, you've got to be product first, marketing second. And that is something that is very hard for many companies, because with the internet, there's a lot of vapor. Well, you can ride up and down real fast. And you make your money on repeat purchases, not first purchases. And so you've got to have a product that's better, okay? And then the third thing you have to, and there's methods for doing that, there's testing systems, paired comparison, blind tests, there's all kinds of methods for doing that we teach. And then the third thing you got to have is you've got to have a culture, which is what we were talking about, where the culture is about being proactive when they see a problem, not reactive to it, okay? So how do those play out in the whiskey business? Well, the first thing that we've done here is we don't sell something unless it's meaningfully unique. And what we do is we test the product's blind first and then product with concept. And our goal is to win by at least 60-40 in a paired test where you can have this one or this one. And we want to have a meaningful uniqueness score that is at least a 60-40 win against products costing twice as much. Okay. And why do I do that? Because I'm a dweeb. I'm a little tiny company. I don't have the truckloads of money that the big 3 have, the big 4 have. I mean, they got such empires in this closed market. I got to have that because I got to be better, because you can't play in this game. Okay. I mean, and to that end, we make this product Dexter using 200-year oak cherry and maple wood, finished it in it. Get a product. It gets named one of the 12 top bourbons in the world by Paul Pacco at Ultimate Spirits. We introduced it in January. It sells out in 40 minutes. We put it out at Father's Day. It sells out again. I put it into Kentucky and New Hampshire, and we've got Liquor Barn, Costco picked it as a select, and it's going crazy. But because they taste it and they go, my God, this is a $50 product that drinks like a $100 product. And they're like, you should mark it up. I said, no, stack it higher, sell more, sell more. And so it's meaningfully unique, and that makes a big difference. And then when it comes to, so that's having meaningful uniqueness, product, you got to have it, and then a culture. And so that focus on making products, Noble Oak's the same way, our Dexter brand's the same way. We do a custom whiskey experience where people can come in and taste and make their own whiskey. right there and get the bottle right there on the spot. And we're franchising that. We're going to open up in Louisville in January and different places. But everything that we do is meaningfully unique. And I've got a culture that, you know, to paraphrase the old Apple commercial, some call us the crazy ones, and we're okay with that. You know, if I sell custom whiskey and I sell an experience here at the tasting room, you know, I can do 3 or 4 times the revenue per person a classic distillery can do. Well, that math works. You know? So it is about meaningful uniqueness. It is about make the product and then figure out the marketing so that you're product first, and then have a culture that is embracing never-ending continuous improvement, making it better, better, and better, and better. I mean, this morning at 7 a.m., when the guys came in to work there, I grabbed 2 of the guys to help make the whiskeys with me and do R&D, and we're sitting there drinking, and I said, what do you think? He says, well, it's good breakfast. this big company just sent us some stuff, and they said, this is the product. We would love to be able to make something, but we want something better than this. Can you guys make that for us? And so, you know, we're sitting there this morning at the bar, and we're going through and mixing things, and we've got like 5 hypotheses of ways to make it. And I mean, we'll make it, and it'll be better. It'll be way better than what they've got. Because when you run 3,000 experiments, 300 paired comparison tests, you know more. And the more you know, the smarter you get. Sad thing is, many people, they go through life and they look up and they're no smarter than they were 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 5 years ago. If we're not smarter, we're dying.
That's a very interesting approach to business, and it's one that does not seem to me fits well with the current model of business, which is that you have the private equity firms which want to go in, buy something, and 3 years later turn around and spit it back out after having sliced here, there, and somewhere else. It strikes me as a whole different approach.
Well, two things that, yes, it is. In the respect that it's of those days, you've seen the data before, when the original founder's still there, how much better those companies grow versus when there's professional management in. And so part of it is, you know, when your name is in effect on the building, when it's your company, you know, you do stuff that matters. Now, with private equity, though, interestingly, because we do this for a lot of food companies and all kinds of beverage companies, pretty much every beverage company that you cover, we have been here at one time or another. And another big food company we just did a thing for, they're doing some more stuff with us, is that what the private equity people like us to do is, because we're big on patents. Okay, we patent everything, and we have courses. We teach people how to do it. They're not as hard as you think, and it's a whole separate conversation. Is what they love us to do is to invent something that can be transformational, get the patents filed, and we're FDA approved, which is like a higher standard than most distilleries. We can actually prototype the product for them and get it into a market and get it selling. They want us to get it just to that point, so that then when they're flipping the company, they can say, look at this asset here. And over again, I've helped private equity companies get a lot more money for their sale because we've basically created out of vapor some patents and some prototypes that, you know, and sometimes some market results that show that the company, this is an unrealized asset that has a value to it. And for them, that's free money. And our fees are nothing compared to the amount that they can mark it up.
Yeah,
but again, the only thing there at one is greed. So you got to understand, it's just greed. It's not about doing something meaningful. It's about making more money.
Right. Understood. Exactly. So what got you interested, though, in starting a craft distillery? I get the innovation part here, but, you know, most of the guys who start craft distilleries don't grow very big, and they certainly don't turn things over as fast as you do.
I was curious.
Okay.
I mean, it's literally as simple as that. And I had this young guy who's just amazing, Joe Gergash, and I was curious. Could you control the relationship? Whiskey, wood, heating, cooling, it's a simple reaction. That's it. There's no voodoo to it. That's it. And could you drive out variation and make it so that you could reliably, reproducibly make it again and again and again. And then if you could open up to new woods, could you create new tastes that have never been there before? And that just fascinated me. Like many things in life, you get incremented to death. You start playing with it and then playing with it some more. And I have an extremely understanding wife. We've been together for 45 years. Forever we've been together. And I went to her and I said, I think I want to make this distillery big. And she says, do it. And I said, well, wait a minute, there's consequences to this. And she said, you deserve to have fun. And I see how much fun you're having with this. Just go.
Yeah.
Now, we live next door in a National Historic house right beside the ranch here on this huge property that we've got. When the distillery is going up, I said, I'm building a little building there. And she came back after walking the dog. She says, they're putting the steel up. I think they're going too high. It seems like they're going like 2 or 3 stories. I go, oh, well, I guess, it's small compared to, and she shook her head. She's very understanding. She's wonderful.
She sounds like it. And you focus on wood because that's the key component, do you think?
Let's be clear. The new make spirit, by the time you distill it to the proof you're doing it, the grain matters about 20%, 25%, 5 or 10% distilling. 70 to 80% of it is the wood. The wood is where all the color comes from, all of the smoothness. You could take that new make spirit and sit it in a tank forever, and it's never going to change. It's the wood. Wood is the magic that brings out the flavor. And when you can do, whether it's New American Oak or like with Noble Oak, we use European Sherry Oak staves that we use. Or in Dexter, we've got reclaimed 200-year wood. So this is vintage wood from virgin forests where the grain is much tighter. And it's a flavor with a finish, which is, that's why the thing's doing go crazy, is because it just has this incredible long and magnificent finish to it. Well, you start to play with cherry wood and maple wood and Japanese oak, Mizuno oak. Oh my God, the Japanese oak is so amazing. And that's where the magic is in the wood. And that's why we focus on it.
So you've mentioned Dexter 4 or 5 times now in the last, let's say 5 minutes, okay? A mention per minute, I guess. So where's the name come from? This sounds like, I don't know what it sounds like. It sounds like a shoe company, frankly. There used to be a Dexter shoe company.
I remember Dexter Shoe up in New England, actually. So Edmund Dexter, we're in Cincinnati, and a quick history lesson. In the 1800s, 85% of the whiskey in America came from Cincinnati, from this area. It was also the 6th biggest city in the country, after Boston, Philadelphia, and that. And this was the jumping off point where people would come, the Queen City of the West. And this was the place where there were whiskey, there weren't distilleries, farmers would distill their grain, put it on boats, float it down to Cincinnati. We're just upriver a little bit here, just east of the city. And they would sell it to one of 109 barrel blenders who would buy the barrels, and you would go in with your ceramic jug, your clay jug, and you'd say what you wanted, and they'd put it together and make your whiskey, blend it. And this went on worldwide. The most famous being John Walker, a fellow over in Scotland, a grocer, famous for Johnny Walker. And that's the way whiskey was. The original whiskey was you would go in and you'd get it. Well, one of these fellas in Cincinnati was a guy named Edmund Dexter. He lived on 4th Street. And he was so famous, Charles Dickens came and visited him, and the future King Edward VII came and visited him there. His son built music hall here. And after Dickens left, he wrote a note to Washington Irving about a new cocktail he had. So I'm like, my God, this is the best story in the world. We got a cocktail from Charles Dickens. This was the big guy. And so we named our product Dexter, and we tried to say, what would Edmund Dexter have served when Dickens or King Edward came to visit? And it would have been the most precious wood of the time. And he would have tried to do something more unique, which is why we use the maple and the cherry wood in it. It gives a brightness and a smoothness to it. And it's got amazing complexity. And so that was the inspiration. When Charles Dickens came to visit, what would Dexter have served him? And that's what we tried to make. And then when it won, and the product came first, by the way, we got the product set, and we had the Dexter name, we had some others we were playing with. And when the whiskey then won all the big awards, it was like, well, that's it. We had like 5 prototypes that we were playing with. And we said, that's it. That's the one that deserves the name Dexter, to have this famous name and to bring it back.
Well, that's a pretty good story and pretty impressive, and it's a long way from using 200-year-old wood to making shoes. So we got to keep in mind it's not the same company that you knew up in New England there.
That's right.
So, well, that's fabulous stuff. I think we're almost out of time. I'm not 100% sure. So I got a couple of questions for you. In your career, at least once you got into the whiskey business, but you can go back before that if you want to. Can you give us 2 pieces of information, and maybe 3? The first piece is, if you were going to advise somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur and get into business, what would you say the biggest lesson you've learned through your career would be? And then the second is the obverse of that. What is the worst disaster you've ever had as an entrepreneur yourself, or that you've observed other entrepreneurs having?
The thing, I'm going to say something, but then I'm going to back over myself. You got to love it, what you're working on. Because if you don't, you're going to give up. And it's hard.
Yeah.
To create something that's truly meaningfully unique, you got to love it. You got to be driven, because it's like you can't stop thinking about it. You got to do it. So if you don't love it, don't bother. Okay. And the reason I'm cautious about it is people will always say, well, do what you love, graduation speeches, do what you, no. No, I'm not talking about doing what you love because, well, I like whiskey, so I'm going to do whiskey. No, you got to love the idea of, I'm going to create a really profitable craft distillery that's like crazy profitable. And I love the challenge of figuring that out, and I want to figure that out. So if you don't love it, you're never going to create something that's going to change the world, and only meaningfully unique products, services, and companies change the world. That's it. It's not games. It's you got to make something better. You got to make something better. And the biggest mistake I see entrepreneurs making regularly, and they hate it when I say this, because sometimes entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs, the ones that have been around a long time, like I have, you don't survive if this is your way, which is you got to do the math. You have to do the math. And in this industry, with the 3-tier system, manufacturer, distributor, retailer, and every state's math is different. That's 50 different states. And then the excise tax and bottles and packaging, over and over again, whether it's in the whiskey business or whether I'm helping other small businesses, because we do a lot of volunteer work with small businesses, the math is the thing they're missing. They say, I'm doing all this work, but I'm not making any money. I said, you got to understand the math. They said, well, I've got an accountant. I said, no. You can't make decisions if you don't know the math. And let me give you an example of this. We were at a trade show in August, Joe and I, and we were showing our woodcraft bourbon blending franchise that allows somebody to open up a distillery for a fraction of the normal cost. And one of the vendors had a piece of equipment for a bottling line that he didn't want to drive home. And he said, I'll give you a good price on it. Because Joe, who I've driven into him to do the math, and he's good at the math, and I knew the math, he and I sat, and in 20 minutes, we went through the math on what money that machine would save us if we owned it. And we did it like 3 different ways. And we went over to the guy and said, sold. And we got the machine for a fraction of the cost, and it saved us money almost immediately. If we didn't really know the math, if we had to have some department do a study on it, we never would have gotten the deal. And so you've got to know the math. You got to know when to then hold them and fold them. When the distributor says, I'll do this for this price, you say, I'm out. Can't do it. And too many entrepreneurs don't focus enough on the math.
That's a very interesting observation. I think it's probably very true, too. I've never heard somebody say that, but it strikes me as one of those essential truths that, I suspect some business school professors would love to hear you say that, and some book writers would hate to hear you say that.
Well, a way to think about it is you got to be a shopkeeper.
Yeah.
You know, the shopkeeper of old, whether it's Sam Walton or whatever, they'd have a feel for the math.
Mm-hmm.
They could tell when something can work or something can't work.
Yeah.
And when I've known a number of people that were founders of companies that were still there, and every one of them knew the math. They could do the math in their head as to what it's going to be.
Yeah. I've seen that too in the newspaper business. I've known a couple of guys who did really well, and you know, you're absolutely right. They just had an intuitive sense. They could hear a pitch made about something, and they would say, "No, I don't think so," or "Yeah, let's check that out further and let's do it right away." One of my favorites was a guy named Nelson Poynter who owned a publication called the St. Petersburg Times, and he did. One of his claims to fame was that he was the first guy to do color, spot news color, spot meaning today's news,
Yeah.
on the front page of every section, including a color weather map. You may
Yeah.
have recalled that
Right.
USA Today became the second one to do that 25 years
Right.
later,
Right.
right? And I asked him, because I wrote my master's thesis on how they won their Pulitzer Prize, I said to him, what made you get into the color printing business? Because nobody in 1960, when they did this, did color. And he said, well, you know, I figured I could make a lot more money if I could sell color ads, but I couldn't convince people to buy the color ad unless they saw the color in the paper. And so putting the color picture of last night's University of Florida football game on the front page of the sports section achieved that purpose. They believed we could take their ad and make it nice in color. And
Awesome.
and you know, at the time I interviewed him, the St. Petersburg Times reportedly was the most profitable newspaper in the country as a percent of sales, and had a fabulous return on investment, and had no debt, none. When they
You know, and Joe, part of the issue with the math, because you know, people listening to this maybe sitting there, so well, I can do math. I can do math. I say, no. Because we have a whole class that we teach just math on campus as part of innovation engineering, which is doing the math on things that haven't happened yet. Anybody can do the math reactively. Looking at spreadsheets, you don't do math. Math is when you look forward. And when you do that, what we teach is you have to do, and we've got tools for doing it, but you have to do probability type math. You have to look at it in a soft, and they used to make fun of fuzzy math, but yes, fuzzy math. And you have to look at probabilities of things, and you have to be able to do that back of the envelope that we used to do. We used to do back of the envelope. You'd have to do the math. You know, when I do a budget meeting at Procter Gamble with the CEO, you'd be asked a question. You weren't allowed to like bring up a spreadsheet. There weren't spreadsheets back then. You know, you were expected to know that math in your head. And we've lost that ability to feel the numbers, as you say. And so it's being able to estimate, protecting the downside, building for the upside on things that don't exist yet. And much of the time people are against innovation because all they can see is the cost side of the balance sheet, all of the problems. They can't see the profit side of the balance sheet of what it's worth, because they don't feel good about proactively measuring, only reactively measuring. And so there's a mindset shift that comes with the math that I'm talking about.
Got it. Two other questions. One, is there any question you wish I would have asked you that I didn't?
No, this has actually been refreshing as an interview. I mean, I always say, as I emailed you back, I said, just be conversational. It's never conversational. And so, no, this you actually, I think you have a career in this.
Well, thank you. I hope I do, because I've been doing it for a long time now. So, you know, but I hope I do. And you know, I enjoy the conversations. You would be amazed at what you can learn from people by just talking to them, as versus going in with your prepared list of questions, and we have to check off every one. My final question is, well, maybe this is going to be two more questions. Which one of your books would you recommend to somebody who wanted to tap into your approach?
It's like my children, you know, I love them all at different times,
Right.
depending on where they are. But the most recent one, Driving Eureka, is the most comprehensive one that really talks about it as a system, innovation as a system. And it has a little bit about Brain Brew in the beginning, back in the early days when we started, which is since we've grown a lot since then. But driving Eureka is really the best one. It's got the comprehensive sense in it. Some like Jumpstart Your Brain are good for the creative part. Jumpstart Your Business Brain's more for sort of the business side and marketing. But driving Eureka would be by far the first one that I would recommend.
And I presume that's available at the usual suspects, Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Audiobooks, all of you name it, yeah.
The usual suspects. And of course, your local bookstore, right? If you have a local bookstore.
Please support independent booksellers. We like to support independent booksellers. We like independent booksellers. I use the independent booksellers audiobook instead of the giant, even though it costs me money. I get that. But we like to support independent booksellers.
Great. And if somebody wants to get a hold of you to find out about your classes at Eureka Ranch or otherwise consult with you about something, how would they do that? EurekaRanch.com or BrainBrewWhiskey.com. And you'll see at the top, you can go back and forth, toggle between them, but EurekaRanch.com, or even if you can't remember that, DougHall.com, it'll get you to all. They all are connected to each other. So one is as good as the other.
That's right.
Excellent. Doug, thank you very much for your time. It's been a great interview. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. We will get it up as quickly as we possibly can. If you'll stand by for a minute, I'm going to wrap this up, and then we'll chat for a couple more seconds, but only a couple, I promise. So Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed and learned as much from this interview with Doug Hall as I have. This interview far exceeds my original expectations, so I'm really happy to offer it to you all today. And we wish you a very happy day, good luck, good prosperity, and best wishes for a happy holiday season. So thank you, everybody, and have a very great day. Bye-bye now.